Hello BookTube, and welcome to the continuation of my 2020 library tour. For this video I'm going to be doing the classics, by this I mean the literature of ancient Greece and Rome. So first up I have Suetonius' Lives of the Caesars. I picked this up from Golden's Book Exchange in Waco a few years ago, and sadly I haven't gotten around to it, but I've been meaning to. Next is Hesiod, translated by Richard Lattimore. This is a collection of three of Hesiod's poems, the Works and Days, the Theogony, and the Shield of Heracles, accompanied by some really nice illustrations. I've read these poems a few years ago, and I quite liked them. I picked this collection up, I want to say from the, so I was a graduate student for less than a semester at San Francisco State. And at the time I was there, there was a little book room in one of the buildings. I don't quite remember which one it was, and I don't know exactly what it supported, but they basically sold used books. And so I would go in there every few days or weeks to see what they had and pick up stuff. And this collection was one of them. I actually want to say Anatomy of Criticism might have been one of them too, or that one might have come from a book sale the graduate students at San Francisco State put out. Thank you. So next is Herodotus' Histories. Picked this up from Golden's Book Exchange, and again, haven't actually gotten around to it yet. Really should correct that at some point. And then there's Stephen Fry's Mythos, the Greek Myths Retold. This came out maybe a year or two ago, and this book focuses on the myths of the Greek gods. There's a second follow-up called Heroes, which focuses on the heroes, and I quite like this book. Fry's reinterpretation of the Greek myths are amazing. Love them. Next we have Greek Drama, a little small anthology featuring Aeschylus' Agamemnon and Eumenides, Sophocles' Antigone, Oedipus the King, and Philoctete, Euripides' Medea, Hippolytus and Trojan Women, and Aristophanes' Frogs. I picked this up from a little thrift store in downtown Austin. Well, technically not downtown Austin, it was South Congress, where St. Edward's University was, and quite happy I picked it up. At the time, Austin had, or South Congress had this little like the first Thursday or a Thursday of every month, a lot of the stores on South Congress had like an extended hours or sales or something, and I went one month and went to this thrift store for some reason and picked it up. Next is Polynomials of Rhodes, is The Voyage of the Argo. This one I did pick up in San Francisco at the little book sell nook room. Quite enjoy it. It's a novelized version of the Jason and the Argonauts. Quite good. Next is the Orestaya by Aeschylus in a Penguin Classics edition. I picked this one up, I think, from Barnes & Noble when I was in like high school or something. And it's quite good. I really enjoy it. It's been forever since I've read it, though. Next are the Greek Myths of Robert Graves. And as I think it was Steve Donahue said, that Robert Graves very much has his own interpretation of Greek mythology. And he is not afraid to push that interpretation, and particularly in the notes to the myths. And definitely take his interpretations with a mountain of salt. Although, that said, Coro Carigny, I think, also has a similar interpretive ideas about Greek mythology as Graves does, and there was probably some sort of Freudian, Jungian inspired interpretation that sort of was quite the rage in the 30s and early mid 20th century about Greek mythology. Next, we have the Aeneid by Virgil. I picked this up from Golden's Book Exchange a few years ago. Although I had this edition in a trade paperback for a class, I took a Greek mythology class at St. Edward's and loved it. And we read the Aeneid and Iliad and Odyssey, and I quite enjoyed this book. It's been a while since I've read it, though. And finally, the texts of Greek mythology. Well, not maybe texts, but the important, some of the more important, yeah, the big ones. The Iliad by Homer and the Odyssey by Homer. So I picked these two up from the St. Andrews University student bookstore. So I actually read the Iliad first in my introduction to literary or liberal studies war class. So the first class, or the first section, dealt with the Peloponnesian War as history, and then so the class was basically a joint class between a historian, a professor of history, and a professor of literature, who would actually be my my academic advisor, because I was an English lit major. And at the time, I had the Richard Burton translation from Barnes & Noble Classics, and it's not as good as this edition. And then I took the Greek mythology class and went ahead and picked up this edition, when I also picked up this edition of the Odyssey. Oh yeah, so that was the classics part of my library, although much like with H. Rider Haggard and the classic reprints, these books might end up being broken up. Herodotus and Suetonius could probably go with the histories. The myth books could probably go with the fantasies, since they're mostly fantasies. The hottest translated anthology could probably go over here in this little headboard bookcase, once I move the science fiction books that are there back with the rest of the science fiction. So anyway, so next year, if I do another library tour in 2021, this part might not exist anymore. But anyway, we'll see when we get to 2021. Until then, BookTube, thank you, have a great afternoon, and please stay safe.